And now it's time for Why Did I Say That? With comedian Gibran Salim. The podcast that dives into the messed up things people say and explores the reasons why. It begins now. Here's Gibran.
And this, by the way, is it's a cookie pillow that I got from like a sort of thrift store, but it's also like an emotional support pillow. That's what I call it on the podcast.
Oh, this is like your Wilson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, but that was not a good thing.
But it helped him.
It did help him, but he was stranded on an island and he didn't have other humans.
But that's what
you're talking to me.
I know, but that's what I want for I want it to feel like we're on an island.
Oh, okay.
And we're not going to make it.
Well,
there's
mission
no
accomplished.
hope.
I do feel that way.
So what some of you guys don't know about Alingon, and I can cut any of this stuff out.
What are you about to say?
Oh, nothing crazy. Alingon, to me, is very unassuming. He's very like chill, nonchalant, very urbane.
I don't think
smart.
That word is correct. Okay.
Sophisticated and modern.
Okay.
That's what urbane means, according to what I'm making up.
Hmm.
But every time, there's three things that happen. There's three activities that are going on every time I see Alingon. He's either with a girl, going to meet a girl, or texting another girl.
This is it's
very pretty. That's not inaccurate.
I think that's a mischaracterization.
I don't know though. Oh my god.
I feel pretty confident. If anything, I have like female friends.
Yeah.
And I feel like you might be.
I don't know if they're friends. There's definitely like more than friends going on.
I mean, I maybe I'm flattered, maybe I'm not. I don't know if that's an accurate portrayal at all. The amount of time that I'm spending with a girl would be equivalent to like the amount of money I'm spending on stuffed animals, which is
you spend a lot of money on stuffed animals,
which is very small. If it was a lot, I would have said the amount you spend on stuffed animals.
I don't know. I'm really out of it today.
Yeah.
Can you tell?
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah. I mean, we've been talking about stuffed animals for a very long time.
I'm hungover on almonds.
Oh, that isn't something.
I think it dehydrates you, so you wake up and you eat. They're salted almonds.
Oh. Okay.
With popcorn.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then also you were drinking heavily.
And and the cocaine. But I really think it's the almonds. Yeah. And I'm still recovering from Thanksgiving.
In what ways?
I think you just like need an excuse to say you're recovering something to justify odd behavior.
Oh, okay.
So Thanksgiving is like the most recent holiday. But if it was like Halloween, I would say, yeah, I'm still recovering from Halloween. And if it was like Martin Luther King Day, maybe that's what I would say.
I would love for you to say I'm recovering.
But that would be like a positive thing because I was so emotionally invested in the holiday.
I know it could go that way, but it
riding.
certainly sounds like the other direction.
Yeah, but that's not my
Man,
intention.
I'm glad that's over. How were you during the pandemic mentally? Real bad?
I was in a relationship. I was smoking a lot of weed. We both smoked a lot of weed.
You're in a relationship with weed.
And I was in a relationship with weed, but basically with me, food always ends up coming up on this podcast. I think it's something
because you have a cookie as a.
That is true.
I don't know why.
I was smoking weed. I think what it is with me with weed, and this is even alcohol, is that it's like a open admission to Food Town.
Okay.
And I'm very healthy, but if I smoke weed, then I'm just like, well, I can have one Starburst, and then I'll have the entire kitchen of Starburst. Like, I'm basically what I'm saying is, I think weed and alcohol for me isn't really the emotional escape. Food is, and that gives me access to food in an unhealthy way.
Yeah, it's a gateway to food.
Yeah. So over the pandemic, I wasn't healthy. I gained like 40, 50 pounds.
So that's like physical health, but then also mental health. Is that something? I mean, obviously, it's kind of like paired for you in some regards. But when you were going through the pandemic, were you eating more
Oh, 100%.
because of the stress that you were experiencing? Or was it like, oh, I'm mentally okay, but because I've got nothing better to do, I'm smoking, and because I'm smoking, I'm eating.
It's hard to pin it down because it feels very like chicken or egg for me.
Yeah.
No offense.
Chicken or egg, no offense, is a great line.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Oh, were you saying because of vegan? Because I
Yeah.
thought it was a complete non sequitur, and I think that's really funny to say to somebody.
It was a non sequitur.
Okay.
It was a non sequitur.
Okay.
But it's hard to say because it could also have been preemptive in this like preventative. Like I knew I would feel bad feelings, so before I even got to that, I numbed in anticipation. But I don't think I was doing. I think at the time I thought I was fine, and then come January, February, when I stopped smoking weed and I like really got really healthy.
Yeah.
Then I'm looking back and I'm just like, man, I was not healthy. I was very isolating. And I mentioned this in the last podcast about like a social regret I had with my ex. But I was just really, when I smoke weed and eat, I just want to be by myself and play video games. And I just want the world to not be with me. And I wasn't even aware of that until I stopped smoking and drinking. Like I have more understanding of, I was probably feeling a lot of shit, but I didn't know I was feeling any shit. So I guess to answer your question, yeah, I wasn't doing mentally well. I think I was at the beginning of the pandemic to an extent, a manageable way, and then I just spiraled down and down and down.
That's interesting though. Like if I had asked you during the pandemic, even when you were at the height of your eating, on like a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel mentally? You wouldn't have at that time said I'm not doing well. It was only after the fact that you realized like, oh, it's sort of like a drunk person.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be like, oh, I'm drunk, but then looking back at it, like, oh, dude, I was wasted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so during the pandemic, I mean, it was such a long pandemic. I guess we're still kind of in it.
Yes.
I mean, so there was lots of ups and downs. Unemployment helped a lot. That affected my mood a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you asked me during the pandemic, I would have said I'm doing okay.
Right. As you stuffed your face in Starbucks.
I would have said I'm doing okay
Starbursts.
while dipping a cookie into milk.
That's while dipping a cookie in milk is actually, that sounds very adorable.
It does.
Yeah. But like dipping 500 cookies into multiple cups of milk, probably not the greatest.
All right, this is something weird. It's not necessarily a social regret, but it's particularly odd. So this Thanksgiving, this isn't really a social regret. It's just kind of immature behavior on my part.
Okay.
My sister and my mom were going to pick up my niece from like her friend's house, and I wanted to go with them. And so they went to the car. I wasn't invited or anything. And they were like about to leave. And I was like, and I ran. I grabbed my sneakers, walked into the garage, barefooted, socks. And then I opened the car and I'm like, can I come? And my mom said no. And then I just immediately turned around and left the garage. And then I felt fine. Like, all right, they're doing their own thing. And I didn't want to be around the rest of the conversation that was happening at Thanksgiving in the house. This wasn't on Thanksgiving, but it was the weekend. And then so I went up to the room I was staying in. And then when my mom came back, she felt that maybe I was in my room because I was upset. And I know this because I could hear what she was saying. And because someone was like, where's Gibran? Also, I was very hungry because I was intermittent fasting and I hadn't eaten yet. And someone said, like, where's Gibran? And then my mom said, she's like, I don't know. She's like, I just said no. I was just joking. He can't take a joke, but he can give a joke. And I heard that. And that's not why I was in my room. But when she said that, it now became why I was in my room. Suddenly, I felt like I was protesting my mom rejecting me from this car trip. And rather than go downstairs, I just stayed in my room like an angst teenager who's like super emo, and then I just stay there. But that I wouldn't even have even stayed there had I known she had empathy for that situation. And so I just stay there for like a lot longer to like make an impact. You know, when I go downstairs, like, oh, he's back from his cocoon, for no reason. And then I went back downstairs, and I had a chip on my shoulder with my mom. But I'd never had a chip on my shoulder with my mom. So when my mom was talking to me, I was just kind of like not talkative. And eventually, like, I warmed up. All this to say, you ever have a moment staying with your parents where you feel like you avert back to like this teenage emotional and mental state?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I feel like especially with like brown families, it's pretty common. I was home during the pandemic.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
And it's pretty easy to like slide back in.
Yeah, and on both sides too.
Yeah, I don't know how your family is with that, but I think like my mom, my dad, mom probably more so, very eager to be the mom.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, it's cultural. At the same time, it's like, oh, when somebody's an adult,
yeah,
the boundaries are different, the ways of interacting are different, or I think are healthier if they are.
Yeah.
But it's common for it to not feel that way the longer you're there.
Yeah.
You know, even what was nice when I was with my folks, especially in the beginning, was so we have this basement, and when I came initially, I basically lived in the basement.
Yeah.
It's not like a cement basement. It's like a complete basement with like a living room and
That's
and
nice.
like
But
its own bathroom.
No sunlight.
There is actually
Okay.
the way the basement is laid out in the house. It has windows, and we're on a hill, so actually like the back part of the basement will get light.
Sounds pretty nice.
Yeah, so it could be a space to live in. Not the best space to live in, but it could be. But because I was there, I got my own space, my own bathroom, and my own bedroom, basically, right?
Yeah.
And afterwards, after the quarantine period, which ended up being longer than what had initially been planned because of different things, but I could use the basement as my space.
Yeah.
If needed, ever.
Yeah.
And because that habit had been built over the course of the weeks of the quarantine, that this is like a Alingon space.
Yeah.
It was like I could go into my own thing if I wanted to like work on comedy stuff, if I wanted to like look at video stuff, editing stuff, if I even wanted to just like talk to my friends on the phone or something like that.
Yeah.
Just not being in that same, like I'm not in the, because I afterwards, after the quarantine period, I literally went back into the bedroom that I basically grew up in, right?
Yeah.
And then the brain easily
that bedroom is not in the basement though.
No, it's not.
Okay.
But once I was back in that bedroom, had I initially moved into that room, the patterns that the brain is associating with, Alingon is home. Alingon is in his childhood bedroom. Then like everything just kind of kicks into gear and that same like rut. Because I got to kind of like get out of that rut very early on.
Yeah.
There was a slightly different dynamic when I was home. But, you know, there was still like, I feel like, you know, and on top of that, during the pandemic, 24 hours.
Of course, yeah.
That's the other thing where like,
yeah.
even when I go home now, I go home, but then I'm doing shows in Boston or something. So I can like, I'm gone for the night.
Yeah.
And then there's a space. This was 24 hours. So, just like, you know, just like doing my own laundry, things like that. It's like, it's nice to have just like little demarcations of like, okay, this person's independent.
Yeah.
Because in Indian households, Pakistani households, South Asian households, you're going to get a lot of, this is my boy, I'm going to do everything for him up until I'm not alive anymore. Yeah. And then the guy is going to stay a boy forever. Yeah. Until like his wife becomes the mom. Yeah. You know, and I like I don't want that at all. Yeah. So like I'm very like sensitive to that not happening.
It's interesting because the patterns can reemerge also, not just based off of your behavior, but off of them trying to feel a certain way by fulfilling and carrying out their own behavior in that dynamic. Mm-hmm. The thing with my mom that's particularly interesting is my mom's arms are paralyzed.
Okay.
Her hands are not. It wasn't like that growing up.
Mm.
So basically, my mom had polio when she was little.
Mm.
I think Pakistan was just late for treatment and vaccines.
Okay.
So she was treated, but one of her arms had already kind of caught the polio.
Mm.
But it was treated, so it kind of went away.
Mm.
So growing up, I didn't notice anything. I think she's left-handed, and her left hand was just slightly weaker, but nothing noticeable. So now, in her 60s, what has happened is they call it post-polio syndrome. So basically, polio kind of just reemerges, and now she can't move her arms, and so it's mainly hands. So she needs help with certain things. But I think mentally that has a huge effect. And my mom's an alpha. Like just how she interacts. She's a social butterfly. She's very domineering. She very points fingers, and she still will point with her fingers, but her arms aren't, moving with her. But I think that also manifests in social dynamics, especially around family. So rather than behaviorally her taking a lead, she'll do it with her voice. To have, I'm almost analyzing my mom, and I could easily be wrong. But I think now she's almost more alpha and more of a director in the house with her voice when times it's not necessary. And I think I was probably feeling that more. I'm like, why are you being so itchy with me? And then, it's just something I've noticed over time.
Yeah, it's hard with folks because the patterns that get built in are happening when you're a kid, and then if you're trying to like rewire that, it's like, oh, you've already had 20 years, 30 years,
it's nearly
whatever
impossible
of wiring in the other direction.
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy for that stuff to slide back, and then also for there to be friction if you're trying to change things. I don't do well with being told what to do by my folks. And when I was little, I think there was much, that was happening more, but that's much more acceptable. You're a kid. But now if I'm being like bossed around by anybody and without like even like you'll have to like ask me to do something. If you tell me to do something,
that's a huge thing.
Even if I think it's the right thing to do, I reject being told in a way that I don't think is proper. Because like I don't want to reinforce that pattern. Of like it's okay to speak in a disrespectful manner, even if the thing that you're saying is true. So it's kind of hard because then people can just respond with like, oh, you don't think this is right? And I'm like, no, that part is right. The doing is right. The way in which it's being asked isn't. And it's so hard to kind of like parse that in a conversation. But that's how
I also think that trait, and I'm the same way. I also think it's more prominent with comedians.
What do you mean?
I feel like we have a very resistant nature. I know I do. So I'm more likely to go against something if I'm told not to.
Have we talked about the 4 tendencies?
No.
There was a point in time where I was kind of evangelical about this book, but I'll give you the quick rundown of it. It's by Gretchen Rubin, who also wrote The Happiness Project, which was more popular. But
I've heard of that book, but I haven't read it.
Basically, in The Happiness Project, what she does is she looks at the habits of happy people, and then each month she incorporates one of those habits to see if it actually changes like her happiness, right? And it does. And
she does that individually with those, none of this simultaneous.
I haven't read the book myself, but I think it's...
Okay.
What if I'm making all this up?
Yeah. Based off the movie
Gretchen
that my
Rubin.
teacher showed me.
True psychopath behavior. But no. So she does this, and then the book gets very popular, and then the people who read it are like, okay, I get that you knew that these things had to be done and that you implemented them, but how did you go about implementing them?
Yeah.
And she was like, what are you talking about? You just do it. She didn't understand that for a lot of people, this is the struggle of like, oh, I know what to do.
Of course.
I can't get myself to do it, right? But for her, it was like, I don't understand. So then she realized that there's like something going on here that she should dig deeper into. And basically, she has people take these tests and breaks it down into people have different reactions to expectations, and then there are two types of expectations. There's internal expectations and external expectations.
Yeah.
So what you can have basically is like a matrix, like a 2x2 of like accepts them and doesn't accept them, and then it's like internal and external, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have the people who accept internal expectations and accept external expectations. These people she calls upholders. Okay, so you give them a rule or something like that, very easy to follow, and then this is what she is. If she's like, oh, I'm going to do this, she'll do it because she set the expectation herself.
Interesting, yeah.
Right? And then you have people who struggle with internal expectations but are great at external expectations, right? So
yeah.
So if you are somebody who, if you're like, man, I gotta lose weight, but struggle with it, but then you have an accountability partner.
Yeah.
Or you're like, oh, I'm going to go to Puerto Rico in a month and I'm going to be in like a bathing suit and everybody from my high school is going to see me, right? External expectations, those things motivate. But if it was just me, I can't do it. Those people who are motivated by external expectations but not internal expectations, they're called obligers.
Okay.
Right? That's what her term is.
Yeah.
Then you have people who are internal expectations, but not external expectations, right? So if you tell somebody to do something, but they don't see the reason for doing it because they internally don't see the logic, right? So it's like, oh, for example, like you have like a grandmother who's like, oh, you should dry the plates on the dish rack even after you wipe them, right? That's how I've always done it.
Yeah.
The person who is like, okay, but if you've already wiped them, you don't need to dry them.
Yeah.
But then the grandmother's like, no, this is like how I've done it. Just do it this way.
Yeah.
The person doesn't see the logic and isn't going to do it. Right? They're called questioners because they're like internal expectations matter to them, but not external expectations.
Yeah.
And then you have the people who...
I feel like I'm like that.
And then you have the people who have rejected both internal expectations and external expectations.
Interesting.
So if you tell them, for example, like, oh, eating food is healthy.
Yeah.
Right? Eating, like, I don't know, kale is healthy. Like, even if the internal logic of that makes sense to them, because you've told them that, they're not going to do it, right?
Yeah.
So they're called the rebels in her
Yeah.
They're a very small percentage of people, and they struggle. Because,
I would imagine.
Yeah. Because it's like, oh, if you tell me I can't do something, then I will do it. But if you tell me I should do something, then I won't do it.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of like their mentality. So I wonder sometimes with like comedians where we fall in this matrix.
If only someone told me I shouldn't be funny. I would be a lot funnier.
And then you would be funny.
No, I don't think I rebel, but I question.
Yeah, so you might be more of the questioner. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to look at when you're looking at like how people, particularly if you're trying to get something done. Then like for me, I'm somewhere in like probably like the obliger upholder, where if I tell myself I have to do something, pretty hard for me to do it unless there is some accountability from a social group. Yeah. So like in high school, it was so easy for me to do work because I was going to school every day and I was going to get a quiz, I was going to get a grade.
Oh, for sure.
So easy to bang that out, right? Because I had my motivation. But then after graduating from college, it's like, oh, I have to set my own expectations and do these things all by myself. Compared to how easy high school and college is, that stuff was much harder.
Of course,
And I think it's, if somebody had told me, and like this actually even happened with, there was like a month where I broke down like comedy sets, and then I was like I don't know, like late night sets that I liked, and then I was like posting them, right?
Interesting, yeah.
If I had just done that for myself, I wouldn't have done it every day consistently for a month the way that I did it.
Yeah.
But basically what I did was I had like an email list, and I sent out to the email list, and I said, hey, I'm going to do this every day this month.
Yeah.
And because of that, I found a way to get it done every day.
Yeah.
Because of that external expectation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because one of my questions would be, once you know these tendencies,
Yeah.
how do you execute an improvement? But you found a way.
Yeah.
Do you still do the email list?
Well, I don't do that part of it anymore. But if I do need to get something done, oftentimes, like me and a buddy of mine who similarly is like wired, will hold each other accountable and be like, all right, what is the thing that you need to get done? What is the thing I need to get done?
Yeah.
How can we hold each other accountable?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Who is the buddy that you choose?
This is somebody from college.
Oh.
Yeah. Not a comic.
You wouldn't ask me.
I don't think you would be good for this. But you're like a little rebel.
Hold on to this emotional. What is the book called again?
The 4 Tendencies.
4 Tendencies.
Yeah.
All right, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do I have any, and don't hold back.
Yes.
Do I have any, do you have any why did I say that moments with me?
Why did you
where I
say
slighted you
that?
or like.
Slighted me. I feel like when we talk.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, you will be coming off something.
Yeah.
And so the conversation will often be about that thing.
Coming off something as like a show.
Not a show.
Oh.
I went home and then this happened where I went into my room and then I had to come out of the room, right?
Yeah.
Like, something happened.
Another classic Gibran story.
Classic Gibran in his room, coming out of his room story, right? Something of that ilk.
Yeah.
Will often be like a thread in a conversation that we have.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's a relationship thing, maybe it's something with another comic.
Yeah, I do look at you or interact with you in a way that I value your feedback a lot.
Oh, that's a great spin on it. I appreciate that. Yeah. But I'm not like, oh man, this is so draining talking to Gibran.
Yeah, but there.
For the most part, I feel like.
But there are times, because I know one of the last interactions I had with you, and I said this on the podcast with Karen, but I remember it was specifically, it was at comic strip. I was leaving, and I was telling you about something that just happened, and it was a girl that I had an issue with. Mm-hmm. But you're like literally walking. It's interesting because I was almost recreating the experience that I had with her, which is she had some story that affected her, and I didn't know her that well. And I walked into the green room. She's like, "Oh, hey, you should hear this story." And I'm like, between leaving, and I was like, "Oh, wow, that's tough." And I just walked out. But it was a very impactful story to her. I didn't even want to hear the story.
Right.
And then I walked out. And then when I walked back in later to the club, she walked up to me and she's like, "Hey, how you treated me really hurt me." Mm-hmm. And in my head, I was just like,
I don't
treat
know
you?
Yeah.
I don't know you. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, the way you made me feel when you said that was tough and walked away, you made me feel like I was dead. And I'm like, I don't fucking owe you anything. That's not treating. That's almost a lack of treat.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to indulge in that story, and I didn't want to be involved in that. And then I was like, I didn't do anything wrong. And then she went in the bathroom and started crying.
Classic Gibran.
Classic Gibran. But that affected me for like 2 weeks because I feel like a bad person. But I remember I launched into that story as you're leaving a comedy club, almost
Well, I was headed to see a girl, and
you were you?
I don't think so.
I almost hijacked your emotion. She was trying to hijack my emotions as if I'm her therapist or father, and it's like, dude, I don't know you. You can't get. Her expectations were that I'm going to console her. Like, I don't know you. But somehow I did that with you as you were leaving because you're literally in between something. And I'm like, wait, Alingon. And you're like, oh, wow.
Well, I mean.
And then you were like, that's tough, Gibran. And then I went into the bathroom and started
cried.
crying. And it's like this loop.
Yeah.
No,
and then you overheard me saying, like, Gibran's in there crying. And you stayed in there longer, even though that wasn't the reason.
You made me feel like I was dead.
Yes. No, I feel like I'm trying to remember that situation in particular when we spoke. Maybe the length of your tail was longer than what I could allow.
Oh, yeah.
Given where I was headed.
Understandably.
But I feel like we still wrapped it up in a way that had some closure, where it was like, this is what people will often do.
Yeah.
Where they will sort of what you said, the hijack.
I think I need a justification that I'm not a bad person, and you said I think you're fine.
In this scenario, again, give it time.
Give it time. I'm bound to slip.
I'll be back on the pod.
So what you thought of something earlier? Of a moment in your life.
Oh, I thought we were okay. So this is a crazy thing that I said. Do you know? I'll couch it in. I don't even know how to couch it. This is just a crazy thing. Do you know Langston Kerman?
Yeah.
So he and I started in Boston together.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know
he technically came from
guy.
Chicago,
Yeah.
but like he hadn't done much in Chicago until he came to Boston.
Yeah.
So we used to do like a lot of like shows and things together. And it's around Halloween, and this is something I genuinely thought was funny at the time. Again, my knowledge now is different. Is the whole point.
Of course,
right?
yeah. You've grown.
Yeah. We're talking about Halloween costumes.
Okay.
Langston, if you're unfamiliar, I think he's like half black, half Jewish.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, I told him, and this I genuinely believed at the time, what I think would be a hilarious Halloween costume. You might be able to guess. But I can immediately guess. Think of the most egregious thing.
Oh, okay, no, it's not egregious.
Oh, what was your guess then?
Lenny Kravitz.
Oh, that's so funny.
Because he's half black, half Jewish.
It's just so adorable that's where your mind went. No. I told him it would be hilarious, I think, if somebody dressed as a KKK member for Halloween. And he was like, "What?" Because he didn't, as if like he didn't hear me, which I think he didn't. And it was like a Klansman.
You know what a KKK member? It's like, no, tell me.
I don't know where the conversation went after that. But what I do remember is looking back on it and thinking like, oh, this is a very inappropriate, even amongst comics.
Oh,
I feel like to say like, oh, it would be funny without any kind of preamble.
Yeah.
As to like what would make this funny, to then just be like, oh, this is a funny thing.
Yeah.
That was mine.
What? How did he respond? So were you implying that he should be the KK member, or you're just saying it would be funny in general?
I think, man, I'm trying to remember the specifics of the conversation. I think I said it would be funny if I went as a KKK member.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's a funny thing to say.
But it's
also fun to imagine you as a KKK member.
It's not entirely unfunny, but there has to be, I feel like, a lot more runway before you launch that statement, and I think I didn't give the runway.
That is a great analogy.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it also depends on your dynamic with him.
Right.
The chemistry you have with him. What you're saying, the runway.
Yeah.
Essentially, the type of relationship and experiences you've had.
Because
you could say that to certain people, and
right.
there's some people that you can't just say that to someone on the street, or essentially
it would be actually quite hilarious to say to somebody on the street.
Yeah.
Because it's so upsetting. I think Langston and I had enough of a dynamic.
Yeah.
But it's still, I think, probably required a little bit more runway than what I gave it.
Do you think...
I also don't think it would actually be funny. I think at the time I thought it might actually be funny.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where like in theory versus in practice, right? In practice, things...
And even
I feel like, what's his name dressed up as a KK? Or like gave Ari Shafir has like this video where he goes to like a laundromat and gives his like Klan outfit for them.
That was the Curb Your Enthusiasm episode. This last week.
Oh, really?
Interesting. Anyways, but you can't completely remember how he responded.
I
It must
do-
not
I do-
have been a good response.
I think we were at like a mic or a show, so there might not have been as much of a conversation to be able to be had at that time even.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, no, I don't, but I don't remember. I remember him asking, because it was loud, because I said, I think it would be funny to be like I think I said like a KKK member or a Klansman, something like that.
Yeah.
And he said, what? Because I'm pretty sure it was either a combination of mishearing and then being like confused that might even be the right thing. So he wanted clarity, and then I doubled down, and then I don't remember what happened after that.
Interesting.
He beat me up. No. I'll have to ask him if he even remembers it.
He might not.
He doesn't talk to me anymore.
He doesn't?
No, I'm joking.
Okay, I was going to say, no, because that was my next question is, did it burn the relationship?
No. And again, there is a different dynamic between comics than any other,
100%.
group of people. But I still think it's a wild thing to say.
It is wild. I don't think it's that. Between comedians.
Between comics.
It's also the intention wasn't bad.
Yeah. Intention
but it is
definitely
something
matters.
that you held on to, so you explored the moral or social repercussions, or the fact that you're remembering something that you're like, that wasn't cool.
Right.
That has more impact.
Yeah.
Is there? I mean, dude, I've cut out relationships
With black
for
people?
the littlest. Yeah, specifically with black. Actually is not a good word to say. With this one girl, I guess this is how sensitive some comics can be. I'm not saying he was being sensitive, but I'm saying with me, how I'll, especially earlier on, there's two things. When you're early on in comedy, you don't know the bar for what's funny and what's not funny, and you learn by trial and error, and you'll say stupid shit a lot because you think like, oh, that's funny.
Right.
Chappelle said that.
Right.
With 20 years in, knowing his audience.
Yeah,
but,
plus nuance, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But, and this was an accident. I'm sure I've said that. There's so many things that other people have said to me. Usually I talk about things that I say, but there's so many things. One thing in particular, this was such a small thing. It's not even that crazy. But I would often get bomb puns as a brown comedian at an open mic, and someone goes after me, or like, well, at least he didn't bomb, or something. You know what I'm saying? Like a terrorist kind of like play on words that's not clever to me, and I've heard it so many times.
This means you were bombing a lot.
I don't think it means. I think they were forcing the word in.
Okay.
They used a bomb pun with me,
Right.
and I think I had just heard it. You're right. It does sound like I'm bombing all the time. And this
Just
is a
yesterday, in
reoccurring
fact.
thing. And someone said it to me, and at that point, I completely cut. I didn't know them that well, but I immediately severed any potential relationship for like 8 years, to the point where I probably didn't even remember why. Whenever I saw them, in my head, I was just like, no. In my head, I had some rule: you don't talk with that person. Fuck that person. And then maybe 8 or 9 years later, even though it wasn't a big thing to hold on, I just let it go. And that made me think, how many times have I done that with someone else? Probably so many times. There's so many people with, sometimes it's like, why do I get these vibes? And I'm sure I did something stupid or said something that triggered them.
Yeah. It's hard with like,
especially with comics.
Especially with comics, and what you hit on, which is like when newer comics, when you're going up on stage after somebody, you're like, oh, okay, maybe I'll do a riff.
Yeah.
Right? And then you're like, oh, that seems to be something that works, where you riff. And so you say something about somebody who just went on.
Yeah.
And over time you realize like, oh, unless you have a chemistry with that person, it's pretty egregious to comment on somebody else's act, no matter how much they bomb. But yeah, you don't know that, so you do it. It's not ill-intentioned. Being on the receiving end of it, it would still bother me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know? Is it because if it wasn't a specifically brown, like terrorist-based joke, would it bother you still if they said something about your act that was kind of jokey, but talking about,
I think my ability to bounce back from it has shrunk.
Yep.
Some guy at some show, I brought a date, and
you brought a date to a show. You're always with girls, man.
This was like the first date. Honestly, it was like the first date in 9 months that I like hung out with a girl that was like, this isn't platonic.
Yeah.
It was a first date. She comes to the show, and the guy who's hosting is like, what do you want me to bring you up as the world's fattest Indian? And I was so confused.
Uh-huh.
And at that point, I had lost majority of the weight that I had gained, but he had seen me do jokes about how I lost a lot of weight over the pandemic after I gained a lot of weight.
Yeah.
But at no point do I ever say I'm the world's fattest or call myself fat.
Right.
In the joke. But it really annoyed me.
Yeah.
I'm with a girl, meaning I'm not like, oh, let me impress her, but I also don't want to be insulted in front of a girl that's kind of getting to know me.
Yeah.
And this guy, I was like, what the fuck is your thought process? But I think he thought he was making a joke.
Yeah.
The rest of that night, and probably for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Because I would do the show on a weekly basis. I just I severed the relationship. Not that I was close with him, but that I think after a month, I'm like, it's fine. He was a newer comic, and he's probably just like, he also not intimidated, but he also could have seen me as a more seasoned comic. So he's like, oh, let me
riff with him.
Let me show that I'm funny.
Yeah.
And
did he know that you had a girl with you?
Oh yeah, she was literally next to me when he walked up. But then it dealt
was
into
it clear
bro
that it was a
code.
date and not another comic?
It's definitely not. No, I think it was clear it wasn't another comic.
Okay, because I don't know. Wait, I'm trying to see the angles here that might,
from his perspective,
that might
I
absolve
don't
him.
think.
Yeah, I think
she was perceived as another comic.
Yeah, I agree with you though, because I think you were about to say the bro code thing, of like, all right, if somebody,
yeah, it's also bro code.
Yeah, I mean, I hate that phrase so much.
Yeah. Is it a phrase?
It was also bro code, dude.
Yeah. More importantly, bro.
But yeah, there's a emotional awareness, sensitivity to recognizing that somebody's with somebody who they're trying to impress, and unless you are connected with both of those people in some way, saying something that might be insulting probably is not the right route.
I was very confused. And
Yeah.
even if she wasn't there, if she wasn't there, I probably would have been just like, what?
It's also one of those like swing and a miss where it's like,
oh, it's a huge swing and a miss.
Like it's not nearly funny enough to grant, like what is
I think he was attempting like multiple callbacks, because also I have jokes where I say I'm Pakistani,
right,
but people always refer to me as the Indian guy. And maybe it was like a double. I don't know. Anyways, whatever. But I guess my point is that I bounced back quicker in the relationship, forgiveness.
That's good. That is good. I think I'm not as. It depends a lot on the situation for me to, because I'm not a big. I don't know. I feel like I hold people to like a certain standard that I hold myself to. So it's not a double standard where I'm just like, okay, let's be better. Let's try and act like adults. And if you don't, I'm not going to be as pleased with you, What
do you think is the worst thing someone did to you that provoked you to cut them off?
Provoked me to cut them off?
I'm sure you've severed a relationship at some point. Whether platonically or romantically.
So this is a very small world example.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get to a flight, right? And I'm on the escalator.
Yeah.
I'm walking down the escalator, and there's somebody who is taking up both sides of the escalator.
I hate that.
Right? and isn't making any motion to move. So I was like, excuse me, can you move? And then they like make a big deal out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forget. I feel like they said something.
Yeah.
And like my reaction to them was like, I said like, be better.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's my favorite thing to say to anybody.
Be better.
Because like if they're like no, then they're like, okay, fine, you're not gonna be better. Like,
okay, yeah.
I'm trying to think of like situations. So I was parking by near a comedy club.
Yeah.
And as I see a spot, there's another car in front of that spot, and there's a little bit of room in front of that car. So that car could move forward such that I could back into it. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Is like the geometry working out? But I didn't see that the car in front had space until I drove by it a little bit to see that they had a little space in front of them. Once I saw that, I went back, rolled my window down, asked the person, hey, would you mind moving forward a little bit so that I can back in?
Yeah.
Right? And, the story you would expect is they would say, oh, yes. Or if this is a curb situation, they would say no, right? Neither of those things happened here. The person was like, oh, I could, but I think somebody's already backing in. And then I turn around and somebody's taking that spot, right? They had come from behind me and started taking that spot.
Oh, shit.
So then I'm like, okay, I'll go and tell them that I'm backing in.
Wow.
So I backed out and spoke to that person. I was like, oh, I was talking to the person in front to move forward so that I could back in here. And they were like, no, this is my spot. That was like a really annoying, stressful situation where I was like, what are you doing? Right? Like,
yeah.
Why would you, like, in what world where am I coming from? He's like, no, you missed a spot. I was like, dude, I was talking to the person in front of me. That's why they're moving forward right now. And he's like, no, you weren't. So I was like, all right. There was a point where I was like, maybe I'm just not going to move.
Yeah.
But then what I said was like, all right, you can have the spot, but no, you're doing the wrong thing.
Oh, that's awesome. And what did they say?
They were acting like a little kid. They like,
yeah, of course.
Yeah. But stuff like that where I'm like, dude, we're all adults. Like, what?
Yeah.
Let's just try and recognize situations here and behave accordingly.
Be better is great.
Be better is my favorite thing.
My favorite thing is I say, I love to say when I'm being mistreated or feel like I'm being mistreated, I say, I hope you feel better.
I hope you feel better?
I hope you feel better.
I don't even understand how that even applies.
Well, because let's say you're a cashier at Trader Joe's.
Okay.
I'm actually recalling a very specific situation.
Yeah, that seemed to be.
It's just, I gave him cash, but I didn't. Maybe he was expecting me to put it in his hand, but I was kind of like figuring out like what, and then I put it on the table because I was like doing multiple things at the same time. Yeah. And the guy already had like this energy attitude with me. I could just feel it.
Okay.
Which is surprising because it's Trader Joe's. And then when he had the change back and my hands were now free, I went like this for him to give me the change because he was holding it. And he saw my hand and then he put it down on the table to make it a point that I didn't put it in his hand. It was very petty to me. At that point I processed, I was like, oh, you're upset that I didn't put it in your hand, even though I like couldn't logistically.
Yeah.
And or maybe I shouldn't have said this, but I looked at him and I said, I hope you feel better.
Oh.
Which is a very like passive aggressive cunty thing to say, but it's my way of saying, hey, you got an attitude,
right?
And I'm not going to insult you, but I will indirectly by saying, I hope you feel better than how you're currently feeling, because there's no way you could be feeling good if you're having that kind of behavior.
Oh, okay, that's what you're insinuating.
It's very passive.
I thought you meant like, now that you've done this, I hope you feel better. But you're saying
no.
Holistically,
if I'm getting negative,
I hope that you are.
Yeah, if someone's being
mood
with
improves
me,
so that you don't
I
behave
feel
in this
better.
way.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
it's my New York strategy.
Yeah,
Whenever
that's very passive aggressive.
It's very passive, but it's kind of like anti-conflict, but like letting them know that
I know what's happening here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like be better.
Well, yeah, that's a Alingon original.
Oh, it's just tighter.
It's tighter. I hope you feel better. It's
Right.
5 words.
Right.
You down to 2.
Just be better.
But I hope you feel is the key difference.
I know.
It's a whole aura.
I know. You're putting a lot out there.
Because I'm also saying I'm better than you by
Yep.
saying I hope you feel.
Yep. It's like that's like a Christian,
I'll pray for you.
pray
It's
for
kind of like
you.
I'll pray
Yeah,
for you.
yeah,
Fuck,
yeah.
it's not as original as I thought.
Well,
But it's a spin.
it's a spin.
Okay, we should end this podcast.
Oh, did we start? I didn't even know we were doing it.
No, we didn't actually. Alingon, is there anything you want to promote?
I'm set to headline shows in Indianapolis and
Okay.
Sunnyvale. If you
Okay.
go to my website,
Okay.
which is alingonmitra.com, or if it's hard to spell,
We'll
you
have
can
it
go
spelled out in the info and stuff.
Okay, or tiktokcomic.com.
Okay, you're
Just
on TikTok. Very
directs me
cool.
to directs to my website.
Awesome.
Yeah. You can
yeah.
follow on Instagram at Alingon Mitra, on TikTok at Alingon Mitra,
Okay.
and then come see me in Brooklyn.
Okay, I will.
Yeah.
Alingon is super funny. His clips are amazing. I watch them on Instagram. They're very funny. Tremendous writer, comedian, deliverer of punchlines. I'll stop. You guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, if you like this podcast, leave us a incredible review. And if you didn't like it, still leave us an incredible view. We are on all the social platforms. Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Patreon. Thank you for tuning in. Spread the word. Spread the love. I'm Gibran. Good night.